bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at the bachelor's establishment these servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young woman. It's not a very interesting subject, so I never speak with myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. If the lower orders don't set us the good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, how are you? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. Yes, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country. What on earth do you do there? Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
You have nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
They're absolutely horrid. Let us speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire's your county, is it not?
What? Shropshire? Yes. Yes, of course. Oh, hello. Why all these teacups? Why the gift of the sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so comparatively young? Who's coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Not perfectly delightful.
Well, that's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
Algy, I'm in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Hardly a romantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's very romantic to be in love. There's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I'm married, I shall certainly try to forget the fact.
No, I've no doubt about that, dear Algy. Why, the divorce courts were invented for those whose families are so curiously constituted.
It's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, yes, but you'll be eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. Bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter is too.
Yes, well, you needn't eat as if you're going to eat it all. Really, you behave as if you're married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
How do you know that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That's nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you must first clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What do you mean? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case this whole time? Why, I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I was nearly calling Scotland Yard about it. I was almost offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard
There's
up.
no point in offering one now that the thing has been found.
I think it's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. But, you know, now that I read the inscription, I see the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And whatsoever, it is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, please, it's very absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half the modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am perfectly aware of that, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture with you. I simply want my cigarette case
Yes,
back.
but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Yes. Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, a charming old lady she is, who lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From little Cecily with her fondest love.
Dear boy, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall and some aunts are not so tall.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You are one of the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's very absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I shall keep this as proof your name is Ernest if you ever attempt to deny it to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Jack in the country and Ernest in town. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Now, come on, old boy. You'd much better have the whole thing out at once. Go on, tell me the whole thing. And may I mention, I've always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed bunburist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburist? What on earth do you mean by that?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation and pray make it improbable.
Dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about it. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me, in his will, guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew, who addresses me as uncle out of motives which you could not possibly understand. Lives at my country house under the tutelage of her esteemed governess, Miss Pleasant.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited, and I may tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that. I've bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Tell me why you're Jack in the country and Ernest in town.
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It is indeed, it's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to be conducive to either one's health or one's happiness, I have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, who gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. And that, my dear Algy, is the truth, pure and simple.
What you really are is a bunburist. I was quite right in calling you a bunburist. You're one of the most advanced bunburists I know.
What on earth do you mean by that?
You have invented a very useful younger brother in order that you may come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may go down to the country as often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, where I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine anywhere with me tonight.
I know. You're very foolish about sending out invitations. It's very careless of you. Nothing annoys someone as much as not receiving an invitation.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relatives. And in the second place, now that I know you to be a confirmed bunburist, I naturally want to talk to you about bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
Fellow, I'm not a bunburist. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I shall kill him in any case. Miss Cecily is a bit too interested in him. I think it is quite a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly suggest that you do the same with this Mr. Your invalid friend with the silly name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury, and if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
If I marry Gwendolyn, and she is the only woman in the world I should ever hope to marry, I would certainly not want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
Algy, that, my dear friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home is proved in half the time.
Please don't try to be cynical. It is so easy to be cynical.
My dear
these days.
fellow, it isn't easy being anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her alone for 10 minutes in order that you may have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
All right, if you want.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good morning, gentlemen. I hope that you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
It's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two rarely go together.
My, you are smart.
I am always smart, aren't I, Mr. Bird?
Oh, you're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call upon dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death, and I must say I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Thank you. Oh, and I also have one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Of course, Aunt Augusta. Oh, good heavens. Lena, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane.
You're welcome, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there not being any cucumbers, not even for ready money.
Well, it really makes no matter, you know. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be entirely living for pleasure these days.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
Well, it certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Oh, I've such a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. Such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Oh, I hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle will have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the truth is, I've just had a telegram from my poor friend Bunbury, who seems to be very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
Oh, it is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say that I think it is high time that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. Well, this shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. Well, as far as improvements in his ailments goes. I would be very much obliged to you, Algernon, if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something to encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll go over the program I've drawn out if you'll kindly come with me into the next room for a moment.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. It's very kind of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain they mean something else entirely, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I should like to take advantage of Lady Bethel's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public at any rate you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone with the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Oh, my own darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
Earnest, my own Earnest.
But, well, you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes. Yes, of course it is. I know, darling, but, well, suppose I had some other name. Well, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Oh, but that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Yes. Well, to speak quite frankly, I don't care much for the name of Earnest. I don't think it suits me at all.
But it suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music all its own. It produces vibrations.
Yes. Well, I think there are much nicer names. Well, I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack! No! There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. Yes, married. I mean, there's no time to lose.
Mr. Worthing?
Well, certainly. Well, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe that you weren't entirely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject is not even been touched on.
Yes. Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept.
Gwendolen.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Miss Fairfax. Gwendolen. Will you marry me?
Oh, of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I am afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Oh, but my own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Of course, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, Ernest, what wonderfully colored eyes you have. They are quite brown. Oh, promise me that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Arise, sir, from that semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you, and besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, might I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are engaged to no one. Should you become engaged to someone, either I or your father will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be, it is hardly a matter she could be allowed to arrange for herself. Now I have a few questions for you, Mr. Worthing, and while I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will remain below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolen. Gwendolen, the carriage! You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Oh, thank you, Lady Blackwell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am perfectly willing to enter your name should your answers prove to be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I do smoke.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. A man should have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. What is your age?
29.
Oh, an excellent age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
Oh, I know nothing, Lady Blackwell.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear it. I don't believe in anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like an exotic, delicate fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone, Mr. Worthing. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory.
Oh, I do own a country house with some land attached to it, of course, about 1,500 acres. But of course, I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
Well, a country house, how many bedrooms? Oh, that matter could be cleared up afterward. You do have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature, such as Gwendolen, could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I do own a house in Belgrave Square, although it is let out by the year to Lady Blossom. Though I can get it back whenever I like, of course, within 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
Oh, well, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
Ah, the unfashionable side. I knew there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. Well, now on to minor matters. Are both your parents living?
Oh, well, I'm afraid I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, might be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both seems like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, the fact of the matter is, Lady Blackwell, I said that I had lost both my parents. But it would be closer to the truth to say that my parents have seemed to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where respectable gentleman with the first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a rather large, somewhat ordinary handbag of brown leather with a handle on it. A very ordinary handbag, in fact.
Where did this Mr. Thomas Cardew come across this quite ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. Yes, it was given to him in mistake for one of his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I feel I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had a handle or not, seems to me to show a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Indeed, probably has been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for recognized position in good society.
Well, ask you then what you'd have me to do, Lady Bracknell. I assure you I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would advise you, sir, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly do that. Although I could produce the handbag at a moment's notice. It's in my room at the country house. That should satisfy Lady Bracknell.
Me? Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly dream that I and Lord Bracknell would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Well, good day, sir.
Oh, good day, Lady Bracknell. Heaven's sake, Algy! Algy, don't play a ghastly tune! How idiot are they?
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? Oh, you don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you. I know it's a way she has. She's always refusing
She's
people.
fine as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I never met such a gorgon. Of course not, I don't know what one's like, but I'm sure she is one. Well, oh dear, I'm sorry. I suppose I mustn't speak of your relations like that to you.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about it. You always want to argue about things.
That's exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Algy, you don't suppose there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about, 150 years?
Women always become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Can't go anywhere without meeting clever people these days. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
Really? I should very much like to meet one. What do they talk of?
The fools. Oh, the clever people, of course.
Oh, what fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth of your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, Algy, the truth is not something one tells a sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What silly notions you have about how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty and to someone else if she's plain.
Now that is more nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh, I shall have got rid of him. By the middle of next week, I shall say he died in Paris. Yes, of apoplexy. Yes, lots of people die in Paris of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
Are you sure a severe chill is not hereditary or anything like that?
Of course it isn't.
All right, then, very well. That does it. My brother is carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said Miss Cardew is a little too much interested in your brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, that's all right. She is not a silly romantic girl, I'm happy to say. She goes for long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays absolutely no attention to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care that you never do. She's excessively pretty, and she's only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18? mean?
Algy, one doesn't just blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are certain to become great friends. Why, I assure you that a half hour after they've met, they shall be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a whole lot of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we'd much better go and dress. You know, it's nearly 7.
It is always almost nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never known you when you weren't.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Kindly turn your back, Algy. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and though I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do will ever alter my eternal devotion to you.
My dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origins, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My darling Gwendolen.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
My dear, you will let me see you out to your carriage, won't you?
Certainly.
I should see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Bill? Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put up all my dress clothes, the smoking jacket, all my Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope it shall be a fine day tomorrow, Lane.
Oh, never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
Oh, I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now, that is a sensible, intellectual girl. Well, the only girl I ever cared for in my life, and what are you laughing at?
Oh, I'm just anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
Algy, if you're not careful, this Mr. Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes, they're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily? Cecily? Oh, surely the utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours. Oh, especially at a moment when one's intellectual pleasures await you. Your German lesson is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language, and I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Oh, child. You know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. But he laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Oh, your guardian is in the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a very good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much.
Well, I don't think that even I could produce an effect on a gentleman whom, by his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Well, indeed, I am not sure that I wish to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Cecily, you must stop writing in that diary. I do not see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all the wonderful secrets of my life If I didn't write things down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction is.
Well, I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. Was your novel ever published?
Oh, alas, no. Well, my manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. Well, I use the phrase in the sense of lost or mislaid. Oh, to your studies, child, these speculations are profitless.
Oh, but I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Oh, Dr. Chasuble. This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the garden, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not complained about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
No, we do not expect him back until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely drawn from the pagan authors.
Oh, I think, dear Doctor, I will have that stroll with you. I find that I do have a headache, and the walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might stroll to the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecily, you may read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee, you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Oh, even these melodramatic, even these metallic problems have their melodramatic sides.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Earnest Worthing has just driven over from the train station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany, Dublin. Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss, he seemed very much disappointed. I did mention that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was very anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, I have been rather reckless.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been rather bad in my own small way.
Well, I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you were here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
It is a great disappointment to me, and I need hardly say, but I must take the first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfits. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Oh, I don't think you'll require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the reports I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make it your mission, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've not time this afternoon.
Then you won't mind my reforming myself this afternoon.
That is rather quixotic of you. But I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have an appetite unless I've had a buttonhole first.
A maréchal miel?
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that any sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to do.
Yeah. No. He died abroad.
Close with the house at once, as anybody else would have done, seems to me to indicate they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins that looks like repentance.
But they don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough? They're looking. What effrontery!
Oh, they're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we shall not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to say to you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I may have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, my dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of the gravest importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town as often as possible to visit me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairbanks?
I have the greatest doubts upon the subject. But I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their answers seem to me to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then do you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us shall be the one to tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An admirable idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier, that is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For me, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of equality of the sexes. In matters of self-sacrifice, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage, of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
The price, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any point. But you must, of course, realize that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, indeed, as on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? No, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did Mr. Bunbury die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he quite exploded.
Exploded?
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury couldn't live, so Bunbury died.
He must have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. Well, I'm glad to say that Mr. Bunbury finally made up his mind at the last to a definite course of action and that he acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally gotten rid of Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Worthing, may I ask you, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a particularly unnecessary manner?
Oh, that young lady is my ward, Miss Cecily Cardew.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be far above the average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. Well, I think a preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew in any way associated with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any persons or families whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Gervasey Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporting Fifeshire M.B.
Oh, then, Sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspires confidence. Even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They are open for your inspection.
Well, I've known grave errors in that publication, sir.
I have also, you will be happy to know, that Miss Cecily's guardians are solicitors are the Messieurs Markby, and Markby.
Oh, Markby and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally seen at evening parties. Well, so far I am satisfied.
Very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, registration, confirmation, vaccination, whooping cough, and the measles. Both the German and the English apply to the court.
Ah, life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I myself am not in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, look at the time. We haven't a moment to lose. As a point of order, I should ask you, Mr. Worthing, if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, well, only about £130,000, and in the funds, thank you, Lady Bracknell, so nice to see.
£130,000! And in the funds? Oh, Miss Cardew looks like quite a lovely girl now that I look at her. Oh, yes, so few girls of the present day have any real solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live in what I am afraid to say is an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple and your hair is as nature might have left it, but we will soon alter all that. But a thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the prettiest, dearest, sweetest girl in the whole world, and I don't care a twopence about social possibilities.
Oh, never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Pretty girl, you of course know that Algernon has nothing to depend upon but his debts. But I don't believe in mercenary marriages. Why, when I married Lord Bracknell, I had no little fortune. But did I let that stand in my way? I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, and you may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Well, I think the marriage will take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Yes, I myself am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, and I think that is never advisable.
Pray, allow me to interrupt you, Lady Bracknell. But I must tell you that Miss Cecily Cardew is my ward, and she cannot come of age. She cannot marry without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Oh, upon what grounds, sir? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously eligible young man. Why, he has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one desire?
It pains me to speak truthfully to you about your nephew, Lady Bracknell, but I'm afraid there can be no doubt about the matter. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Oh, untruthful? Algernon? Well, impossible. He's Oxonian.
I fear there can be no doubt. For today, he gained admission to my home under the false pretenses of being my brother. He then drank, I have just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Perrier Jouet Brut 89, a wine I was specifically reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful behavior, he consequently stayed to tea and devoured every single mug. And what makes his conduct the more heartless is that he knew from the first that I did not have a brother, that I did not intend having a brother, that now or any time in the future, I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
After careful consideration, Mr. Worthing, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
How very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my decision remains firm. I refuse to give my consent.
Come here, dear. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit 20 when I go to evening parties.
Oh, you are correct in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite exact about her age. It looks so calculating. Well, 18, but admitted to 20 at evening parties. Well, I don't think it will be much time at all before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage, so I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray, Lady Bracknell, forgive me for interrupting you again, but I must tell you that under the terms of the late grandfather's will, Miss Cecily Carter does not come legally of age until she is 35.
I see no grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. Why, London society is full of women of the very highest birth who, of their own free choice, have remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is a point, in fact. Why, of my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was quite some years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily here won't be even still more attractive at the age that you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I knew it. I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Oh, my dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew positively states that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say shows a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
Oh, Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I shall certainly allow your nephew to form a ward with my niece.
You must realize that what you propose, sir, is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I have proposed for Gwendolyn. Algernon can choose for himself. Well, come, dear, we have missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more would expose us to comments on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christening.
Christening, sir, is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I think that under the present circumstances, Dr. Chasuble, I don't think it would be any practical value to either of us.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment, Dr. Chasuble. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same woman. May I ask what position she holds in your household, sir?
I am a celibate madam.
Miss Prism has, for the last 3 years, been Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Oh, in spite of all that I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestibule, dear Canon. I have been waiting there for you 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism! Where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in the charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A week later, through the elaborate investigation of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a 3-volume manuscript of a novel of more than unusually revolting sentimentalities, but the baby was not there. Prism! Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish that I did. Well, the plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared to take the baby out in his perambulator. I had also with me an old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place a manuscript of a work of fiction I had written in a few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself. Well, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
Where did you deposit the handbag, Miss Prism?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, I must ask you. You must tell me where you deposited that handbag, please.
I placed it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Oh, the Victoria line. Oh, Victoria, the Brighton line. Oh, that's it. Oh.
Gwendolyn, I must retire to my room for just a moment. Will you wait for me here?
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
No, I dare not suspect, Dr. Shoswell. I need hardly remind you that in families of high position, strange occurrences are not supposed to happen. They are hardly considered the thing.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Please, examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends upon your answer.
Well, it seems to be mine. Yes, here's the injury that happened. Oh, from the upsetting of the Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here's the stain. Oh, on the lining caused by an explosion of a temperance beverage. An incident that happened at Leamington. And here on the locks are my initials. Oh, the bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it returned to me so unexpectedly. It has been of a great inconvenience without it all these years.
Miss Prism! Miss Prism! More is restored to you than just the handbag. I was the baby that you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother!
There has been some error. That woman can tell you who you really are.
Miss Prism, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you mind telling me who I am?
Well, I'm afraid the news I have to give you won't altogether please you, but... Well, you are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algernon's elder brother? Well then, I have a brother after all. Cecil, how could you have doubted that I have a brother? Dr. Shoswell, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you scoundrel. Well, you'll have to you with more respect in the future. Why, you've never behaved to me as a brother ever.
Well, not till today, I admit it. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own. What own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
I hadn't thought of that. Well, I suppose the decision of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affection.
Well, then, the matter had better be cleared up at once. Lady, Aunt Augusta, at the moment that I had been placed in the handbag by Miss Prison, had I been christened?
Well, every luxury that money could afford, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Well, then I had been christened after all. That matter is settled now. What name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I can't recall at the present moment what the gentleman's Christian name was. Well, I'm sure that he had one. Well, he was an eccentric, I'll admit, but that was only in later years, and that was a result of the Indian climate and marriage and his indigestion and...
Can't you recollect what my father's Christian name was?
My dear fellow, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was 1 year old.
The general's name would appear in the army list, wouldn't they, Hunter?
Well, the general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life, but I'm sure that his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the last 40 years are here. Thank you. These delightful records ought to have been my constant study. I should have paid much more attention to these. Let's see. M. Generals. Malum, Magsby, Markby, Mixby, Bobs. Gosh, the names they have. Moncrief, Lieutenant, Colonel, General, Christian names. I'll be buggered. Ernest John. Gwendolyn, I always told you my name was Ernest. Well, it naturally is Ernest.
I remember now the general was called Earnest. I knew I had a reason for particularly disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Oh, my dear Gwendolyn, it is rather a shock to discover that one has been doing nothing but speaking the truth the entire time. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own Letitia.
Oh, Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.